first to admit it is not often you find answers to life's most existential questions, especially in cable news. Questions like, who are we? Where do we come from? How are we all connected? But our specialist today is a geneticist whose groundbreaking DNA research provides some new clues into some of those very quandaries, at least when it comes to our physical constitution.
Your own scientist, people. This is your own scientist.
Joining us now is Professor Brian Sykes.
Professor Brian Sykes.
Professor at Oxford University and author of DNA USA.
All right, listen, well, the scientist officer.
America. What don't we know that you do know about our genetic history?
Listen what he's got to say, people.
Startling, you think? I think I know everything about your genetics.
He knows everything.
When you look at it, what's
not yours personally, Dylan?
No, well, not yet.
That can be done with relative ease.
I'll give you a cheek swab.
I won't leave without one.
But when you look at the analysis, what bore itself out?
Well, fundamentally, what I was interested in when in America is that here you have a fantastic convergence of three continents from a genetic point of view. I just wanted to see how they mixed up, what it showed about individual origins, even within people, how different parts of their genes had come from different places, and what they thought about it.
Scientist.
What did you find?
What did you find?
Mixing, as you would have guessed, but it's not just that you have African Americans and Native Americans, American and European Americans within their DNA. You can see traces of almost all of those in almost everybody.
Everyone
I've discovered that I have a piece of African DNA,
Bang!
an African ancestor somewhere or other. It helps run my pancreas. So,
did you hear what he just said, people?
We are all everybody.
Yeah,
to varying
we're all everybody. So it's not just the individuals that mixed up in America, but you've got that mixture within yourself, and your genes are cooperating with each other. Because if they didn't, you'd be dead.
I think I understand from your research that you think that America may have had some European visitors sort of before 1492. It sort of dates back earlier than that. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, this is work that uses a very, very good indicator of ancestry, which is a piece of DNA inherited down the maternal line. Now, when Native American ancestry was worked on, I have to say, usually without permission from the people involved, which was scandalous.
You scandalous?
That was looked at. There were four groups of people, four groups of ancestors that made up the majority of Native Americans. However, in recent years, a fifth group has been identified, particularly in tribes that live close to the Great Lakes, the Ojibwe tribe in particular. And the matches with the four main groups of Native Americans are from Siberia and Eastern Asia. But in the Great Lakes, this particular cluster of DNA comes not from Asia, there's no trace of it there, but from Europe. So I think around about the same time, something about 10,000 years ago, there was a small group of people that came from Europe, directly over the Atlantic, which was partly frozen then, so could have got round at the edge of the ice, and I think that's the most likely explanation for what we see in a small proportion of Native Americans.
Good, Tim?
Well, in American society today, we definitely see there is significant racial sort of grouping off. There's intermarriage between black and whites and Asians and whites, but that's the exception.
Because I don't want to know we're all one people. This is a proof, yeah?
How much does it matter?
Your own scientist.
A country like ours sort of...
And they're still not trying to tell you the whole truth. They're trying to come up with these words and whatever. To just try and come out with the facts, fam.
European and African intermarriage, or does that not make a difference very much physically?
No difference whatsoever.
Well, you're sort of asking the question if it was totally mixed up, whether all Americans look identical, or they wouldn't. But there's an enormous amount of mixing has already taken place, whether or not it's acknowledged. For example, amongst African Americans, I don't think there are any African Americans that don't have some European ancestry.
Boom.
And talking to my volunteers,
you hear what he just said?
Getting samples from African Americans, European Americans. Some of them were surprised and thought they didn't have any European ancestors, but they certainly all do.
All.
I'd be most surprised if I found one that didn't. Amongst European Americans,
Amongst the Europeans?
particularly in the South, I didn't find any that didn't have some African
Whoa!
ancestors as well.
So you mean Spain, Italy?
No, I mean
southern US. Okay.
the southern US.
No, it means Spain, Italy, everywhere.
I didn't.
He said Europe, you know.
Hundreds or thousands of people, but all the ones I did test, all the volunteers from the South, the European Americans, had quite substantial sometimes elements of African DNA. So they had African ancestors. So it's a bit ironic because the one drop rule, which you probably know about, would have classified them all as slaves.
That's sort of
Everybody in the South would be a slave by the one drop.
What was that?
One thing I regret I never did manage to find was an extreme white supremacist or a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Why?
Because had I tested them, and if they were from the South,
Why?
I'm pretty sure they would have had some African DNA. My next question would have been, because one of the great things about this particular test is you can identify which genes you've got from where.
Jeez.
So let's say a member of the Ku Klux Klan had a gene which was controlling his kidneys, for example, from an African ancestor.
What?
Would he rather do without his kidneys? I think not.
Jeez! Are you hearing this, people?
How many people did you sample? I mean, in some ways, it's almost curious to me that we don't see even more of this. I know we approach it from the idea of expecting that everyone is sort of genetically somewhat homogeneous, but I would imagine there's a lot of this.
Oh yes, yeah, there is. I mean, it's probably least noticeable amongst the, which surprised me, amongst the descendants of early New England settlers. I asked for volunteers amongst people whose ancestors arrived before 1650, and I thought, well, I'm hardly going to get any, but I had hundreds of volunteers. And I was expecting, as a geneticist, you tend to have rather jaundiced view about mating practices. I was expecting to find a lot of Native American ancestry there amongst the descendants of the early settlers, but I didn't. I only found it in one instance. A man who knew he had a Mohawk ancestor, I was able to show that that Mohawk ancestor had given him some DNA that was actually controlling his blood group.
Very quickly, and this is a big question for a short period of time, but if, in fact, most human beings carry the genes for pretty much every race, to some degree or another, which is what you're asserting, that a lot of us carry a wide mixture of a wide variety of racial history, such that genetically we are effectively everybody, even though I look like a certain, we all have an outward appearance. What are the implications for racism if we're all carrying the same gene pool?
Well, this would take hours to define what racism meant, but
there's no such thing, people.
But there's no one-to-one biological equivalence between race and biology.
The other long conversation we can have now as a geneticist is your jaundiced view of male-female relations. You're a man who knows too much for about too many people. Professor, a pleasure. Congratulations on the book. Check it out, DNA book. USA, a genetic biography of America.
Yeah, people. That's it, fam. Yeah. Check out this 93-year-old in your own time. But family, that's it. Yeah. That is all you need to know. Yeah. That is all you need to know. Family, we are all related. Your own scientist telling you.
Thank you so much for being.
Yeah. Your own scientist is showing you, telling you that, yo, we are all one. You know what? We are all black star. We all have the African DNA or gene. You know the ones there. And that's proof right in your face. Don't worry. I'm going to do another video breaking that down.